It's a pleasant afternoon in June. Mel and his best girl, Thera, are enjoying a ride. Well, he's enjoying it. She's not too happy about the way he drives. He's got a good car, and he likes to show what it can do. Hey, you're supposed to slow down for a school crossing. Mel doesn't slow down for anything. See that jalopy up ahead? Watch him pass it. These boys have their opinion of such big shots. Uh-oh. Perhaps Mel's not such a big shot after all. Here we go again. He's used to this. Paying a fine won't be any hardship for Mel. A ticket doesn't mean a thing to a phony like that. Mel's determined to overtake the jalopy and cut the driver down to size. The man wants to know if Mel's going to compete or watch. Mel's going to do whatever that jalopy does, only better. Many boys like Mel were a public problem. Until the 1950s, someone had the idea of turning this abandoned airstrip into a legitimate test course for hot rods. Here they compete under strict rules designed for safety and fair play. This strip at Santa Ana was so successful that others were opened up across the country. Hundreds of clubs have been formed. The hood lifters, the Arabs, throttle jammers, shifters, chaparrals, knuckle busters, clutchers club, dusters, sidewinders, and others with equally fatal names. Automatic expulsion faces any member who races on the public highways. As a result, the juvenile nuisance problem has been reduced as much as 90% in some communities. Here's Mel and the jalopy. The flagger thinks Thera better get out. There they go. Sideline experts. Mel can't believe it, but it's happening. He's left behind. Far, far behind. He's humiliated and angry. His one thought is to find Thera and get away. There she is, talking to the fella that just beat him. He's giving her his card, and she's taking it. This is the last straw. Mel refuses to be impressed. His defeat by the jalopy was a challenge he has accepted. He'll have some tall explaining to do about this heap of junk he's bringing home. He knows he can handle his folks. He's equally sure he can breeze through this job he's undertaken. In the next weeks, he learns a lot. The most important thing being how little he knows. He makes one trial run after another when nobody's around to see him fail. She cuts out when he gets up over 100, and he can't figure why. He's too proud to ask for help, although he knows where he can get it. Tara gave him Dave's card. It's hard for him to pocket his pride. Besides, he's not at all sure of his welcome. Dave looks friendly enough. He'll chance it. Wow, what a motor! You've really got something here. Dave thinks Mel ought to enter the big timing meet. They think Mel could turn 150 miles per hour. He hasn't made 120 yet. That's because he needs new wiring and new plugs. Also, he should put in a third carburetor, install an alcohol system, and run on nitro. They'll be glad to help him. Their generosity astonishes Mel. He's joined the fraternity where the car's the thing. The two-day meet has started. Here at Lake El Mirage, the object is not to race car against car, but to see which can obtain the highest speed in its class. The event gives these boys an opportunity to test the cars they've modified for speed and general performance. Many contestants come and spend the night. Among them, Dave and Mel. There's one of the timing officials. He sees to it that safety is the keynote of these meets. Inspectors is rigid. Those that don't pass are eliminated. No boy under 16 is allowed to participate. Those under 21 must have their parents' written consent. Crash helmets are a must. As are safety belts. Accidents are few, but no car is allowed to start unless the ambulance is standing by at the finish line. Since daybreak, the starter has been sending out the cars. This streamliner is next. The loudspeaker tells him to get underway. Very few of these cars have self-starters. He's away! And up to speed as he enters the track. He breaks the first light beam, sets the timing machine in operation. He breaks the second light beam at the finish. The time is registered, announced, and recorded at the board under the starter stand. Car after car goes out. T-Roadsters. Belly tanks. Chopped coupes. Highest speed made today, 168.127 miles per hour. Car 138C, you're next. That's Mel. His hands tremble as he puts on his crash helmet. The official wishes him luck. 138C, take her out. He's on. The car fishtailed it to take off. But his stiff arms are back to the course. Phew, that was close. Hold her steady, Mel. He can see the reason for the safety belt now. Sweat's running down the back of his neck, and his helmet weighs about a ton. This is no smooth concrete strip he's traveling. The dry lake bed is full of ruts and bumps. But he's in control now and beginning to enjoy the thrill of the run. He begins to drop off. Now he's in high and praying he'll get past 6,000 revolutions per minute going through the traps. There's the first marker up ahead, and the tachometer says 5,900, 5,950, 6,000. He's in the trap now at 6,500. The best he can do. He's out. His time? Car 138C turned at 151.06 miles per hour. The time is official. What a welcome awaits him back at the pits. Trophies now instead of traffic tickets. He'll never speed on the highway again. Nor will any of these others. For through this safe and constructive outlet, these boys satisfy their craving for knowledge and speed. Out of their ranks come the engineers who develop improvements for your car and mine, who create new design and affect economies. These boys of today are the men of tomorrow.
Behind the wheel of that Boulder Street Lightning? That's me, Bullet Bill Bowers. My folks and I just moved to this new city, and it sure seemed to me like we picked out a town full of sleepwalkers. That included the fellas and girls my own age, too. I never saw such a collection of sleepy Joes, and they drove like rich old ladies in old-time electric heaps. It looked like I was going to have to educate the high school on the subject of hot rods, how to take a jalopy and really make it move. Why, in the burg I came from, I had the juiciest bug of any rodder in the Goose Greasers. That was our street racing club. And I had the biggest collection of traffic citations, too. All us greasers drove the cops crazy, and I could have started a private mental sanitarium for those I'd worked over. Sister Janet, yes. Walt was president of the Knights, the City Auto Sport Club. His sister was secretary. I guess my roadster impressed him. Yeah, I really had a job putting some life into this town. Why these jokers even walk slow? I went into my act at lunchtime, trying to bring the word to a bunch of prime squares. But believe me, that was the coldest audience anybody ever played to. I got nothing. Just nothing. I didn't get it at all. Were these guys abnormal or something? Or had I joined up with a bunch of zombies? It was gonna be tough, but I'd have to bear it. I was stuck with him. This city was a slow burn. It was kind of lonesome that first day, and after school. But I knew a way to get him to notice me. It had always worked before where I came from. Yeah, they knew I was around now, all right. You should have seen them scatter. I got a lot of attention. Some of it's not quite what I had in mind. Officer Jim Daniels came to school to give his regular safety talk. He took off after me. First he told me I was driving like a wild man. I took that as a compliment. And then he asked if I was a member of the Knights. So I said no, I was a goose greaser and wanted to show him my card. But all he wanted to see was my driver's license. So I was getting my first ticket in this city. Didn't impress me much. Like I say, I held a goose greaser record. But this was a different kind of a ticket. Well, I had to go to court, all right, but that wasn't new. But this court was held right in the school. And the judge and jury and the whole court were girls and fellas like myself. How about that? I didn't dig it at all. Officer Daniels was there. He was the police department advisor. The judge really socked it to me. No, I didn't have to go to jail or pay another fine. I was sentenced to a special traffic school for unsafe and reckless drivers. I'd heard about these school courts all over the country, how they'd help cut down teenage accidents, but I'd never dreamed I'd end up in one. I had to find out from somebody just what was the matter with this town. Why were they so far behind the times? I guess Officer Daniels had figured out what I was thinking. He suggested that Walt and Janet Perry explain a few things about their city and hot rodding the Knight's way. They gave it to me, both barrels. They weren't behind the times, I was. How about that? Me behind the times. So, I began learning about real hot rodding. The kind that developed after World War II. That's when thousands of high school and college kids and servicemen were bitten by the speed bug. They began cutting down and souping up stock cars and racing them in the public streets. It didn't take long to give drivers under 25 a bad name. Why? Maybe because teenage accidents were killing or maiming somebody once every 2 minutes, causing more damage than all fires and twice as many casualties as we had in the whole Korean War. The police cracked down, too, and collected driver's licenses wholesale. This scene was played up in a national picture magazine. But like Walt explained, figures don't mean much, just reading them. You're a lot more impressed by what happens to you personally. Tom Hanks was Walt's best friend, and his hero, actually. Tom had been in the Air Force as a fighter pilot. Now he was going to college. Tom had built up just about the slickest cut-down custom conversion in existence. You see, Tom had a big advantage. His father, George Hanks, had a big auto repair business, and besides that, he manufactured and sold speed parts. Mr. Hanks had to admit that his son had the hottest motor in town. But Tom shouldn't have spent all his time on the motor. There are other parts to a car, too. Like those little gimmicks in the wheels, the brakes. Tom was breezing down the road, and he was catching up to the 1105, a pretty fast freight. Then he thought of a good test for his engine. If he could beat the fast freight to the crossing, he'd know his engine was perfect. Then the engine sputtered, missed, slowed down just a little. Tom wouldn't beat the train. He'd have to use his brakes. But he didn't have any, and it was too late to turn off. It would have been easy to find that leak in the brake line, but Tom had spent all his time on the motor. A whole lot more impressive than figures. After the accident, Mr. Hanks told Officer Jim Daniels he wanted to do something, anything, to keep other boys from getting killed the way his son was. Well, Officer Daniels was ready. He'd been reading about a new kind of hot rod club, with stiff, safe driving tests, and which only admitted members who hadn't had a ticket for 6 months. They raced their cars, but only on special safe drag strips after complete safety inspections. So that was how the Knights Hot Rod Club was organized. Mr. Hanks was its sponsor, and Jim Daniels agreed to be police department advisor. Mr. Hanks turned over a garage to the club and gave them enough tools and equipment for a start. Every hot rodder in town wanted to join, but the safe driving test and no ticket requirement kept out quite a few at the start. Then, while they were waiting for a drag strip, the Knights began getting their cars in shape to qualify. And to many proud owners' surprise, a lot of the cars failed the safety inspection. Those that failed were disqualified for racing, so the owners worked them over night and day until they did pass. The inspection teams were getting good, so Officer Daniels decided to play a joke on them, see just how good they were. He brought over a prowl car that was ready for overhaul. The mechanic had found 5 things wrong. Now Jim wondered whether the Knights could find them. All the inspection teams joined in, teaming up on Jim's car. And they found the faults all right. And then more faults. And more faults. And more faults, a dozen more than the contract mechanic had located. When Jim got that report, he realized he'd been driving a death trap. He was lucky to have gotten to the garage alive. Yeah, the Knights had made a believer out of Jim. Meantime, Mr. Hanks was collaring all his business friends and getting them to help sponsor a drag strip and safety program. He was a real salesman. Almost before they knew it, they were signed up. Knights sponsors. Mr. Hanks and Jim Daniels went looking for a site to develop a good, safe drag strip. They found an old airfield that looked like it would fill the bill. It didn't take long to get the strip ready, and when the Knights staged their grand opening and their first-time trials and drag races, they were really on their way. The club began to impress people, the whole city, in fact. The Knights were proud of their club and were out to build a new reputation for hot rodders, for courtesy and safe driving. More and more motorists in distress received club courtesy cards. They led a successful campaign for driver education and auto shop training in high school, and right away, this began paying off, just as it has everywhere. In a survey in one state, 800 untrained drivers had 5 times as many accidents as 800 who had received training in school. At the same time, the untrained drivers got 7 times as many traffic tickets. Teenage drivers who are trained in school courses have a lot fewer accidents and get a whole lot less tickets than adult drivers. The driving teachers say that the students really go for it. Driving class is one they never miss. And why would they? Every now and then there are guest speakers, like the famous Ralph De Palma, who's considered the greatest